what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football. It is a Freak Flag Feel Good, Fake It Till You Make It. Ric Flair, woo! Football Friday edition of our Friday live stream here on Texas Football. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Pleased to be joined by the newest member of the On Texas Football family, my good friend and co-worker, Jeff Howe. Thank you guys for joining us, no matter where you're joining us from. I really appreciate you guys taking the time. Lots to get into on the show. Of course, we are in the midst of the NFL draft. Had the first round last night, and a hell of a first round if you're a Texas Longhorn fan. You have been 3 Longhorns drafted in the first round for the first time since 1980. I will turn 45 this year, and folks, that's how long it's been. 44 years plus the Longhorns had 3 players drafted in the first round. So we'll talk about that. Congrats to Kelvin Banks. Congratulations to Jahdae Barron. Congratulations to Matthew Golden as well. Matthew Golden had a hell of a draft night because he ended up being drafted to the Green Bay Packers, who were hosting the NFL draft too. So a little sentimental moment there for Matthew Golden. So we'll talk about all of it, and we'll talk about what Longhorns we expect to be drafted in the at least in day 2 of the NFL draft here today on Friday in rounds 2 and 3. We'll get into that discussion too. You got big recruiting weekend because there'll be some visitors on campus for the Longhorns, so we can get into that a little bit as well. Spring football discussion. We are closing in to the end of spring football, so if you want to get in some spring football talk, news, notes, and nuggets, we're all game for that. But you guys drive the show any direction you want to. Super chats, jump to the front of the line. You can interrupt the show at any time, and we'll try to address as many questions, comments as we can. Remember, Friday show's a little bit shortened, so we'll probably be out here a little bit after 2. So if you got questions, comments, throw them out there fast and furious, and we'll try to hit as many of them as we can. All right, Jeff, just overall, let me get your thoughts about draft night, round 1 for the Longhorns. Before we get into some of the individual, specifics about where these Longhorns were drafted in their situations, just give me your thoughts about the night overall for the Texas program.
First off, let me just say this as a card collector, that was the only downside of Matthew Golden running that 4.29 because his card prices have gone up and they ain't coming down, so I can't get my Matthew Golden cards yet. So I need something to slow down the rise. But no, the level of idiocy regarding the Kelvin Banks takes just blows me away.
Yeah.
It's a combination of salty Saints fans that didn't get Shedeur Sanders when they wanted him. I saw somebody, Rodney, saying this is just a Saints, Twitter homer fan say, why do we take an injury prone tackle at 9? I'm sorry. Kelvin Banks played every game of his career.
Too, right?
Except one. He didn't play in the SEC championship game.
And then I went down in the A&M game. So 1.5.
He didn't play in the SEC championship games because sorry, we need to survive another day. We got a playoff run to think about. So I'm not gonna get my All-American left tackle get his ankle more mangled than it already is. So the fact that people saying, well, he can't pass, he's not that great a pass blocker. Right. That's the one thing he does better than anybody in the draft.
Anybody in the draft.
So, the surface level idiocy of NFL fans just astounds me when we get to the draft, especially because Rod, nobody's watching the offensive line.
No.
And
you want other people I know that actually watches O-line when you watch film. That's the first thing you talk about is line play. You're the first humans that do it.
And I'm not saying that makes me great. I'm saying that makes me a sick puppy, but I digress. Watch some actual games. If you watch actual, the showing Jalen Walker's 1 sack against Kelvin Banks where Quinn Ewers failed to move and Jalen Walker swiped his ankle as he's going to the ground. Not the flex you think it is, Falcons fans. So I just don't understand where all the Kelvin Banks just nonsense is coming from. I haven't gotten it since the pre-draft process started. I still don't get it now. I'll never get it. And you know what, Rod? I don't know that I've ever, other than Deontay Foreman, who you and I are both team Foreman, I don't know that I'm ever going to root harder for a lifetime Longhorn to carve out a nice career for themselves in the NFL than Kelvin Banks. Just because I want him to prove all these mouth breathers wrong. That no, I don't know what the Patriots were thinking. Will Campbell's arm length and his wingspan was not as big as everybody thought it was, but yet somehow it's okay. But Kelvin Banks was bigger than everybody thought, yet somehow there's still a problem with him. Make it make sense. because it doesn't. So
yeah,
I don't get it. So props to Kelvin. And I think I don't know if you go, because I wasn't on with you guys while I was getting ready to come on when Kelvin got drafted.
Yeah, that's why I want to hear your thoughts about Kelvin.
The entire Saints, pretty much everybody, I think, except Mickey Loomis was at Pro Day. Kellen Moore was there.
Yeah, you're right.
All the assist, Bo Davis, Terry Joseph, they were both there. The other thing that I think is key there too, I forgot who the offensive coordinator for the Saints is. The offensive coordinator is Doug Nussmeier. Doug Nussmeier and Steve Sarkisian are pretty much best friends. So that was all Nussmeier had to do was go, Sark, tell me about this kid. And we all know how Sark really feels about Kelvin Banks. So no better endorsement. And one that
Bo Davis endorsement, right? Bo Davis like, hey, I can tell you what my guys went against him. I can tell you what he's
So I love Kelvin Banks going to the Saints. Jahdae Barron to the Broncos. Love the fact that you got 5 long. I may have to be a Denver Bronco. I know my uncle lives in Denver. He's a huge Broncos fan. He's been trying to convert me for.
Hey, I love the Broncos. I was once a Broncos, so I love me some Broncos too, man. Both the Shanahan clan.
go do a deep dive on this, people. How would you like to have dinner at a table with Rod, Maurice Clarett, and Jerry Rice? Because they were all on the Broncos together. So
Chad Bailey on there. Yeah, that was a nice squad, man.
Do with that what you will with Mike Shanahan as the head coach. So I love Jahdae with the Broncos. I hope Sam Ehlinger makes that roster. If something were to happen to Bo Nix and Sam got to cook, that wouldn't make me mad. But I wish nothing but health and good things for Bo Nix. But I love Jahdae with the Broncos. I love what Vance Joseph can do with that defense. Well, by the way, it's Terry Joseph's cousin. So again. We're in the Joseph family. We're in the Texas family. We're in the connections to Texas family. So again, no better endorsement you can get. So all that said, I like Jahdae with the Broncos because you need plenty of DBs. You got to think about. We talked about this last night. You got to think who are you in the division with, right?
What's your ecosystem?
You got to face Patrick Mahomes twice a year.
Yeah.
You got to face Justin Herbert twice a year. Now you got to face Geno Smith and Chip Kelly twice a year. You can't have enough quality DBs. So. I like the fact that the Broncos just took a safe pick that I think is going to be a really good pro for a long time. And then Matthew Golden, I hope he bucks this trend, Rod. You've got the numbers on guys that have run these insanely fast combine times. They don't necessarily translate to 1,000-yard seasons in the NFL. I hope Matthew Golden bucks that trend. I say this, the reason why I believe in him going to Green Bay in an offense run by Matt LaFleur that's from that Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay tree. Yep. There's going to be, once he gets the verbiage down, because everybody's got different verbiage and their own twist on it. There's going to be a lot of crossover between what Matthew Golden did at Texas for 1 year under Sark and what he's going to do for Matt LaFleur in Green Bay. So that I like his chances to succeed, Roddy. I know, like I said, I know you've got the numbers. They're not great, but I think Matthew Golden's got a chance to buck the trend.
I do. I mean, he's got a quality quarterback, right? I mean, this is the thing about Matthew Golden, and kind of we'll work our way back to the Kelvin Banks thing. The thing I found interesting about Matthew Golden, I remember talking, and we were on together during the live stream, which, by the way, great. Thank you guys for joining us during the live stream of the first round of the draft. A lot of folks joined us. We had a great time. We appreciate all the support. But I've been saying this forever, right? I watched the NFL draft and pay attention to the trends. The Green Bay Packers do not draft receivers in the first round. That's just not how they work as an organization. There are a few organizations like that, like the Steelers are kind of like that. There are just some organizations. They don't spend a lot of draft capital historically, traditionally, on certain positions in the first round. They believe, no, we get value there elsewhere. Either we trade for those guys or we get them in, we can get them other ways in free agency, whatever it is, or we get them in middle rounds or late rounds. But let me give you a stat about the Green Bay Packers. That was just unbelievable. In addition to everybody knows first receiver they drafted since 2002, right? First wide receiver that the Green Bay Packers have drafted in the first round since 2002. Aaron Rodgers was asking them to draft a wide receiver for years, and they wouldn't do it. But if you go look at, the Green Bay Packers haven't drafted a wide receiver, tight end, or running back guys in the first round since 2002. They haven't drafted any. They have a strict kind of philosophy about first round is for quarterbacks, for line play, and defense. Gutekunst loves drafting defense in the first round. And yet they, as an organization, really changed their philosophy. I mean, they really flipped it on its head by drafting Matthew Golden in the first round. And like you said, they have the same numbers I have. They know that the top 30 wide receivers in 40 times, right? Take the top fastest wide receivers at the NFL Combine in 40 times. They know out of the top 30, there's been 1,000-yard receiver. Out of the top 30 fastest times in the history of the Combine for wide receivers. So like I said, the Packers know all this too. They saw something they really liked in Matthew Golden. And I think you made a good point about, what people don't pay attention to, there are a lot of things, there are a lot of reasons to draft guys, right? Sometimes it's scheme fit. Sometimes it's the ecosystem that you're in. Sometimes it's out of need, whatever, best player available. And this may have been a combination of best player available, need, and fit. But because you're right, and I've actually said before, you might have heard me say this on the Blitz, if I had to look at all of the Mick Shanahan offenses and the ones that are conceptually, philosophically most similar, and in my opinion, that most resembles Sark's offense, it actually is Matt LaFleur's offense.
Yeah,
I said that a couple of years ago, actually. So I don't know if that's a play. We always think that, Sark's offense is kind of a cousin or kinfolk of the Mick Shanahan offenses because of all the things that they share. But I'll get into some of this deeper because I'm going to probably do a little piece about this and why Matthew Golden is such a good fit. But for the Green Bay Packers, we all agree, that is one of the best franchises in the NFL, right? They're one of the few franchises that know what they're doing when it comes to quarterback. They have a system that works pretty well, and we haven't seen them as an organization have many down years, right, in the last couple of decades, not as many as other teams. That's because Green Bay has a certain way they do things. It is unique. That's why they're the only franchise without an owner. They got their own way of doing things, and it works. So for them to draft Matthew Golden, to me, it's a huge compliment to Matthew Golden.
Yeah,
I said because the Green Bay Packers, because remember, there's a lot of analytics right now, or at least analysts and data scientists who don't think Matthew Golden was worthy of being a first-round pick because analytically, it doesn't. A lot of the analytics don't paint him in a favorable light. The Packers are like, screw that. They're looking at the eye test and looking at the fit and compatibility and saying, no, this guy will be great in our offense. And I think, they got, and by the way, and something people aren't thinking about, two of their wide receivers are on a contract year. Christian Watson's in a contract year for them too, and Romeo Doubs is in a contract year.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes a lot of sense there from a business standpoint as well.
And Christian Watson coming off the ACL, he's out for the first probably 8 weeks. He'll probably start the year on IR, so you won't have him for half the year. So, so hopefully he comes back motivated. I was reading some stuff this morning where the Watson family and specifically his dad, Christian Watson's dad, were panning the pick. They didn't like the pick, which look, it's somebody gunning for your job. Who would want that? So hopefully Christian Watson comes back motivated. But, Rod, to your point, you look at the Packers roster and where they find wide receiver value. If you just look at their take Matthew Golden out, so look at their top 5 returning. Romeo Doubs, they took in the 4th round. Jaden Reed, 2nd round. Christian Watson in the 2nd round. Dontavian Wicks in the 5th round. Mecole Hardman was a guy that obviously they signed as a free agent. So, yeah. Some teams want to draft receivers in the 1st round. Rod, you played for a franchise that loves drafting receivers in the 1st round. So some teams say, hey, we'll find that value later. Some teams won't touch running back. Some teams think, there's very few teams left, Rod, that probably think you can find pass rushers in later rounds, but teams just have different ways they do things. So I think the fit has a chance with Matthew Golden in Green Bay.
Yeah, no, I do.
As a Cowboys fan, it kills me. I gotta root for the Packers a couple times a year now because I want to see Matthew Golden do well. First a Longhorn the Packers have taken since Jermichael Finley, by the way, who
good stat.
Before his neck injury was on his way to probably a Pro Bowl type career.
That's a good nugget. I didn't even think about that, but you're right. Damn, you're right. Yeah, they don't come to Longhorn country very often to acquire talent in the draft.
Well, by the way, one more Matthew Golden nugget. This is why I like keeping tabs of who's at Pro Day. Brian Gutekunst, the GM, was one of the GMs at Texas Pro Day.
Mm-hmm.
So
he looked good. And Matthew Golden looked really good in that Pro Day, man. I'm with you.
Oh yeah, we were. As a matter of fact, we were watching his workout together when he was running routes. Yeah,
them dig routes. He looked really, really good. So yeah, I'm with you. I think you're right about the compatibility. Is something people are underestimating because he's going to have a lot of targets to motion. He's going to be on the move a lot, and they'll put him in stack bunch formations, a lot of things to give him easy releases, stuff like that. So I like that pick. I like if you're Matthew Golden, you can't ask for a better situation because it's the Green Bay freaking Packers.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's a stable organization and cost of living. You'll save a lot of money. Trust me on that. Robbie was in New York City and Chicago, and I was like, yeah, it was fun, but man, the cost of living was brutal. I think about that kind of stuff.
You balanced it out with spending most of your NFL time in Detroit, though. So
it was Detroit is expensive. It was trashy, but expensive still.
That's even worse.
Yeah, exactly. It was expensive and trashy. So I'd rather deal with expensive and kind of nice, but it was not that. Okay, let's get to let's work our way through Jahdae Barron. I'll give you because I found out that a lot of Broncos fans were upset by this pick when I started looking at it. They didn't like this pick.
Who did they want?
They wanted offense. They wanted offense because Sean Payton set them up. I think he had said at one point they need touchdowns and they need offense. The Broncos got a top 5 defense, guys. I mean, the Broncos defense. The Broncos, they were number 3 in yards per rush allowed, yards per carry allowed. They were second in pressure rate in the NFL. They had 63 total sacks last year. That led the NFL. They allowed 6.8 yards per attempt. That was 6th best in the league. They were 4th in touchdown rate allowed. They were 5th in big play rate allowed. They're a top 5 defense. So a lot of them are like, well, it's nice, but we don't necessarily need it. But I always say you got to look at the ecosystem you're in and the value of the pick too, because you can't get a better value. There's no doubt in my mind that Jahdae Barron was one of the few players that had a first-round grade in this draft, and to get him at 20, where a lot of people said, they only had maybe 20 first-round grades on guys. You get him at 20, and you get the versatility, and like I said, almost average, adding multiple players, considering how versatile of a chess piece he is. Can play safety, can play, corner, and can play nickel. I think it ends up being a good value pick for them. And as you point out, I mean, look at it. You got to play Patrick Mahomes twice a year. Got to play Herbert twice a year. Go look at they lost 8 games last year, right, including the playoffs. Go look at the quarterbacks they lost to. Go look at them. They were all good quarterbacks, right? They lost to Patrick Mahomes. They lost to Herbert. They lost to Lamar Jackson. They lost to Joe Burrow. I think they're looking at the group of quarterbacks they lost to last year and saying, you know what? If we don't beef up this secondary, then we're going to keep losing to elite quarterbacks because they know they don't have one. They got a good young quarterback in Bo Nix, but he ain't in the echelon of some of those top 5 quarterbacks or top 10 quarterbacks I was talking about.
And between Patrick Surtain is, probably the top corner in the league right now.
He's the player of the year.
Yeah, he's the modern day version of a lockdown corner. But with Jahdae and even with Brandon Jones, those guys are more than just corners, Rod. Like they can play in the nickel. They could play. You could have them in the slot in your dime package. Situationally, Jahdae's physical enough to where you can play him in the box. And when you face a guy like Lamar Jackson, when you face a team, you're going to face teams that run different offenses. If you want to face a team, you face the Ravens and you're worried about Lamar Jackson, you can flood the field with speed and Jahdae can play. If you face a team like the Chargers that wants to line up, bully ball you, then play action over the top with Herbert, Jahdae's physical enough to where he can play in the box and he's not a coverage liability. So the versatility of Jahdae, we talked about that throughout the draft process because we saw that on full display this last year at Texas. Probably, Rod, I can't think of a guy, and you're part of DBU. I've seen some great defensive backs at Texas.
Yep.
I don't know that I've seen one with better instincts and combined with tackling ability in space than Jahdae Barron. When he makes up his mind to go for it, he doesn't miss.
He's decisive too. He's so decisive. Yeah.
Which there are times in coverage we tell you can use that anticipation, that great anticipation against him. You can get him with the double move and things, but I'll take that gladly if I get a guy who's going to blow, basically shut down a team's perimeter screen game. And, their passes to the flats, the running backs basically take away the running back as a weapon in the passing game. I'll take that at the risk of, hey, he may give up a double move once or twice a game. I just love the move. That's like I said, as many great offenses you're going to play. And here's the thing. If Broncos fans are upset, this is why you always worry about taking a running back in the first round. This is nothing against Amari and Hampton as a talent. Rod, you want to know how many times he touched the football in his 3 years at North Carolina? 695 touches from scrimmage.
He's already aging, man. He's already aging.
700 touches in 3 years.
That's a lot.
That is insane. Mac Brown, what are you doing to my guy? Like, he just ran him to the wheels fell off.
Yeah, now you're gonna run him into the ground. There are literally, and you've seen them statistical studies and analysis that have been done that basically have linked carries and touches of a running back. And there's a certain threshold that the average running back will start to significantly drop off after they've had so many carries and rushes. Now, of course, right now he's a young man, he's fine. But yes, his third year in the league, I may not give him a second contract because I'm like, nah, and you it's a lot of wear and tear.
Yeah,
on those legs.
The classic example for me. Well, there's two now because Zeke is now a classic example. But
Mm-hmm.
I think about Eddie George. Eddie George went from like a superstar running back, and then once he hit that, whatever his touch threshold was, once he hit it, man, it fell off a cliff, and Eddie George was done. Like it was like you went. It's not there wasn't like a nice steady decline. No, he went from being a superstar MVP candidate to you're out of the league in no time.
On average, running backs peak at 27, like on average. And now you got, and you got a guy that came into the league with a ton of carries like that. You also add a couple of extra years, whatever his age is. I don't know how old he is. I'd add like a year and a half on it. I'm like, nah, he's aging pretty fast. But that's a good point. But so they wanted offense, and I'm with you. You can get a good running back in this draft. It's a really deep running back draft. So you can get one later in the draft in the middle rounds. I mean, a quality, probably starting running back for you. But I think you can get a decent tight end because it's a pretty deep tight end draft. You can get a decent tight end in some of the middle rounds or maybe on day 2 as well. So, and wide receiver, I think you can always find a diamond or two at wide receiver in middle rounds. It's all about how you evaluate. That's just one of the deepest positions in football. But I'm with you. I think it's the best value, and he was the best player available for the Broncos. And what I love about him is, like I said, and I've been having a hard time coming up with a comp for Jahdae Barron. I mean, I think it's just tough because he is so versatile. Like it's not easy. I had a couple of guys out, thrown out there in terms of his style of play. But right now, the corner, I went old school with it. That I think he really, because he excels so much in zone coverage, and he can be elite on the outside or elite on the inside. I think his ceiling as a player, Jahdae Barron.
I like it.
That's I like it. Because remember Jahdae Barron was so great in the zone coverages. I mean, he was all eyes and instinct, man. He was great, and he was a fantastic tackler in the open field too. That Tampa 2 system. He's the guy. Former teammate of mine, by the way, shout out. That's the one. I've been looking for it, and I feel like he is as close as I can get. I know I've heard some really good ones. I like I've heard Honey Badger and Brian Branch is a good one. I think he's kind of honestly, if I could, I would say he's a bigger Quandre Diggs to me. I know people don't really like that, but
no, that's good.
Athletic Quandre to me, which is awesome because he's got all the instincts Quandre and the eyes Quandre did, but Quandre was a little more, stout, and I don't know if he was overall as athletic as Jahdae Barron.
Jahdae's got the speed and the limbs, more important, the levers to play corner in the NFL. Whereas Quandre's measurables it ain't gonna allow him to get a foot in the door. To your point, though, Rod, I would encourage our audience a ceiling of Jahdae Barron. Jahdae Barron may be the best zone corner we've ever seen. Yeah, perfect corner for that Tampa 2. As a nickelback, there might not have been too many better than Jahdae Barron, but I say this. I would ask a Broncos fan this. If you get to the end of Jahdae Barron's 5-year contract, at the end of his rookie contract, you pick up the 5th-year option. If he's Tyrann Mathieu, are you happy?
Hell yeah.
Then the pick is worth it. Because I think I think if you play, I'll do the Bill Simmons thing. If you play Jahdae Barron's career 10 times, I think the most likely result is a career that's a lot like Tyrann Mathieu's.
That's a good career. I'll take
minus that. Jahdae's definitely not going to give you the off-field headaches that Honey Badger has to people.
Honey Badger does he got a Super Bowl in there too, don't he?
With Chiefs.
Chiefs, yeah. He bounced around a little bit late in his career, but he was still a quality ad no matter what position they was going to put him at. Usually at nickels or put him at the safety position. You just the comparison has to be somebody that played multiple positions to me, because that is one of the key assets to Jahdae Barron, is that his versatility. Aaron Williams came up to me too. I mean, and came to mind to me that Aaron Williams was longer and rangier But look at skill set wise, got to the league, was a nickel and then a corner and then played safety in the league. They moved him to safety when they got to the league. That's how versatile he was.
And I felt so bad for AJ because he was just starting to. You could see it. He was getting ready to take off, and then he had the injury. So
he had just figured it out, and they had just moved him to the right position too for the league. He was a little man. You got to be so twitchy in that slot and that nickel, man. You got to be so twitchy. And Jahdae's got enough of that because Jahdae's got great footwork. What people don't talk about with Jahdae is Jahdae's got a boxing background. Jahdae Barron, he did box with Ann Wolf.
Yeah.
For like 2-3 years when I don't know, maybe like 6th grade, something like that. He boxed with Ann Wolf, and he would talk about how it was annoying at the time, but it actually ended up being the best thing that happened to him because boxing. I don't know if you ever trained with boxing, dude. You do footwork for like an hour before you even start throwing hands, before you even start doing anything with your hands. They got you just moving around with your footwork. It's footwork, being light on your feet, changing direction, quick, having very deliberate, intentional steps as an athlete, and not just footwork for the sake of it. So he has like no wasted footwork. He's very efficient with his footwork. A lot of that is kind of his boxing background. And another thing about boxing that he talks about, that I heard him talk about, and I said I'm gonna do a breakdown about all this. I'm gonna kind of break down about all the draft picks so far, and I'll go deeper. But the peripheral vision.
Oh yeah,
because boxing, that's like your main thing. Like you got your direct light of sight, but you got to make sure that if somebody's coming from the side, boom, 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 that hey man, that you got to be ready for it, and you react to the peripheral vision. And he talks about how it's amazing, and I've talked about this too. And he describes his own way. How remember I talked about how you have to triangulate as a DB at that corner spot. You have to triangulate. I gotta be able to read direct line of sight to the quarterback, but in my peripheral, I gotta be looking at number 1. And number 2, all right? Or if I'm looking at number 1, direct line of sight, peripheral got to be on quarterback over there. And then wherever my keys take me from QB to 1 to 2, my peripheral has to stay on the previous key. And it should help me gain a little bit of an advantage. But it's tough to train that. I mean, you're talking about years of training as a DB. You probably start mastering that by the time you get into the league. And maybe if you're lucky enough to get a second contract, because of his boxing background, he's been able to master it a little sooner than most DBs would. And that's why you go watch him. He doesn't backpedal because backpedaling kind of narrows your vision. He likes to keep his stance open. Therefore, your vision is open. If my stance is closed, my vision is closed. So I'm just here. All right. But if my stance is open, which he does a lot, his vision is open. So it's to me, that's why he is a really good zone corner. It's a lot of things that he can play man, by the way. I'm not saying, I think we throw it out there like he can't play man. He can't play man. Texas just doesn't play a lot of man. And neither does the Denver Broncos. They play, I think, 60% zone coverage. So he's going to fit in perfect.
Sorry, excuse me. If you want to know what Rod's talking about with the boxing footwork, go watch Rocky 3 because it's probably the most realistic thing in that movie.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Is when Apollo's teaching Rocky the footwork because Rocky has really bad footwork.
Terrible feet. Yeah. And he's got does he tie the strings together?
Yeah, tie the shoestring together. Yeah.
No, because it's a good point too, because his footwork leaves him up because he's too wide, right?
Yeah.
You want to keep your feet underneath, you keep a good base. No, it is. Like I said, I never boxed. We would do like boxing classes as a way to change up the workouts. I never actually pursued it, but apparently Jahdae Barron was like a youth. He was like in boxing classes.
Love it.
Which is really good. So I wouldn't throw hands with Jahdae either.
By the way, I'm kind of disappointed that we found out in Creed, in the first Creed movie, that Apollo won the closed door fight at the end of Rocky 3 when they're about to punch each other and it cuts off. Like, oh man, I wonder who won that fight.
Man, of course Apollo won. Apollo Creed, ladies and gentlemen, go look at Apollo Creed's background. He's basically a Muhammad Ali of his time. I'm talking in the movie. He's basically supposed to be that big and that flamboyant and like that elite of a boxer. And Rocky basically becomes his nemesis or rival or whatever, and then they become friends. But yeah, Apollo, I believe Apollo only lost like 3 or 4 fights his entire career.
Well, I mean,
one was to Rocky. One was when he died against Drago, right? Or whatever that was. He only lost like 3 or 4 fights, and then one of them was ultimately.
I know. You know, we're all competitors, Rod, but I think that's one result you can't come back from.
Yeah. That's the ultimate hell.
When the result is death, I think you're done, son.
Oh, I must break you. I must bless you. Oh man, what a great movie, Rocky 3. If it wasn't a great movie, Rocky 4 was a fantastic movie. Rocky 3 wasn't bad either. Rocky had some of the best villains out there. Let's think about Apollo Creed. He was a villain at first, and then ends up becoming like has the heel.
He had the face turn.
Yeah. And now Creed is the face of Rocky, right? Yeah. Creed, the son and everything. Yeah, no, I love it. It's great. All right.
Don't anybody that wants to do the Rocky Marathon, just skip Rocky 5. Just pretend it didn't exist. You don't need to.
Yeah, that's not a good one. One of the other ones wasn't great either. What's the one they just had about the video game? You remember that one?
Rocky Balboa was good. Rocky Balboa was good. I like that.
No, I watched it because I'm a dude, right? I'm a dude. I'm gonna watch the Rocky movie, of course. Any career, I'm gonna watch it. But R.I.P. Carl Weathers. Good point. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah.
Former NFL linebacker Carl Weathers. And by the way, real quick, I will get back to the draft, but I must know this. I have a soft spot in my heart for Rocky Balboa. Saw that movie the week it came out. Saw it on Friday in the afternoon. Had my first date with my wife that night. So I can't forget Rocky Balboa.
That's nice right there. There you go. I like that. All right. Before we get too far off the rails, let me thank one of our sponsors. Let's thank our friends over at Flat Creek Estate Winery before we move on here. Our friends at Flat Creek Estate Winery, folks, just minutes from downtown Austin. And they won award after award this year for their vintage wine Super Texan. I'm a big fan of their Super Texan, and you will be too. My wife loves it, and her mom loves it, and my mom loves it. You try it once, folks, and then you'll see what all of the fuss is about, what all the awards are all about, because our friends at Flat Creek Estate Winery have outdone themselves with the Super Texan. But that doesn't mean the other wines aren't great. The Rosé is really refreshing. The Pinot Grigio is one of my favorites as well. So check out Flat Creek Estate Winery. By the way, they have a display at your local Central Market. So I saw that the good word is getting out about Flat Creek Estate Winery. You also can get that Super Texan at your local spec. So give it a try. So not only do my friends at Flat Creek produce some of the best premium wines on the market, but also it's a gorgeous venue with barbecues and wine tastings and wine tours every single weekend. Perfect for a day date with your significant other or a weekend getaway with your significant other. That's Flat Creek Estate Winery. That's flatcreekestate.com. Really appreciate them for sponsoring On Texas Football and sponsoring our Friday live stream. All right. We didn't. One thing about before we get to the questions here, Kelvin Banks. So we talked about Matthew Golden Jahdae, and I want to talk about Kelvin Banks a little bit. And I saw the quote from Sark about, and I think it does. You kind of describe this as well a little bit, but I believe Sark describes Kelvin Banks as, I think Kelvin's your perfect Longhorn. As
it really is, yeah.
That was a great little synopsis. I was like, yeah, just the perfect Longhorn. Came in, highly touted, played instantly, always played to a really high standard, became a leader, and really never. Thank you very much, Matthew. Thank you for that. I don't think he ever had a bad game. I mean, I'm sure he had bad plays. Of course, he's human. I don't remember Kelvin Banks having a bad game, even as a true freshman. And against first-round draft picks at the time. Yeah. He probably played up against maybe 6, 7 first-round draft picks throughout his career, maybe more. I don't know.
Yeah, Rod, my favorite Kelvin Banks moment, and the A&M game is coming back, so guys will get to have their moments in the A&M game, because you can become a Texas legend making plays in that game. Ricky Williams always said, and he told me one time, and I've heard him say it in interviews, the A&M game was his favorite. So, yes, you can become a legend making plays in the A&M game. But the OU game is so important. And I remember that 2022 game, 49-0. Texas has that driver. They're driving early. And Kelvin's driving his guy, drives about 10 yards off the line of scrimmage, and just buries him, like, beyond the echo of the whistle.
I remember that, yeah.
And he gets up, and he's talking, and I'm like, this young guy gets it. Like, for a kid in that uniform to understand what that game is about right from the jump, man, and for him to be an offensive lineman too, that's a weight of my heart, Rod. So yeah, that is. I know the block against Oklahoma State in the Big 12 championship game, you can look at so many things, but that to me, that's my favorite Kelvin Banks moment, is him encapsulating what 49-0 was all about. Yeah, early in that game, set the tone.
No, it's a good point. I remember that moment too. And I got a quote. I mean, he had so many great moments. I mean, he's just an elite player. I mean, he's the greatest offensive lineman in Texas football history. Yes. I mean, that's we can debate it, but
he's on the Mount Rushmore. He's on the
yeah, exactly. Yeah, we can debate it, but I mean, he's in the cards. I wouldn't be a fool to say it, right?
I mean, Bob McKay. There's some guys that are up there, but I mean, Jerry Sizemore.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Dan, to me, my Mount Rushmore of Texas offensive linemen: Dan Neal, Jerry Sizemore, Justin Blaylock, and Kelvin Banks.
Exactly. You got to have Kelvin Banks in it. I mean, started as a true freshman. How many people do that? Number one. How many offensive linemen can do that?
And think about this too. In this day and age of college football, he wasn't a mid-year guy.
No,
he didn't get spring ball. He got here that summer.
It took him like what, basically like 2-3 weeks to take the job.
It was yeah. I mean, because it was. Think about this. Kelvin Banks took that left tackle job about as fast as Connor Williams took it as a freshman. But Connor Williams was there for spring ball, and there was nobody for him to compete with at all. It was almost by default. Like, hey, if you can walk and chew gum at the same time, you'll probably be our starting left tackle. No disrespect to Connor, because I love me some Connor Williams. But, like, it was almost like if you asked different team sources, like, hey, is Kelvin going to be the starting left tackle? It's almost like they look at you like you had a third eye, like, of course you're going to be the starting left tackle. Like, who the hell else is going to be the starting left tackle? Yes, he is. So, yeah, because I think, not to get too far off on the O-line tangent, but like Jerry Sizemore, two-time All-American, speaks for itself. I gotta have somebody from that wishbone era on the Mount Rushmore. Got to put Dan Neal on there. I got to have somebody that blocked for Ricky at some point on that Mount Rushmore, right? And Dan Neal was an All-American and two-time Super Bowl champion. Dan Neal was great, just tough. Maybe the best pulling lineman in school history. Nobody could block the counter like Dan Neal. Mm-hmm. Justin Blaylock speaks for itself. We all think about 4th and 5 and VY's run. Go watch Justin Blaylock take out the blitzing safety on that play too. Don't forget about Justin Blaylock, and then I'll put Kelvin Banks in there too. So that's my 4.
I like that. Yeah. No, I'm with you. Here's my favorite quote from Kelvin Banks though too. I wanted to get to this because it's such a great quote from an offensive lineman. He says, "I take a lot of pride in making sure my quarterback isn't touched by the hands of man." Like, what a great quote from an offensive lineman. Like, feel like that's almost so philosophical. Like, it's like, what? He said, "I take a lot of pride in making sure my quarterback isn't touched by the hands of man." I was like, when I heard him say it, I was like, damn, I will never forget that quote. Because he just said it so, eloquently. It just came out, and I was like, I've never heard a lineman put it like that. But, everybody right now is giving it up for that quote from Will Campbell, who says, if you're a defensive lineman, you get a sack a game, you're going to be drafted at top 5. If I'm an offensive lineman, I give up a sack a game, I'm only working at Amazon. All right. That's the quote everybody keeps throwing out there. I wish that we had that Kelvin Banks quote, like him actually saying it, the audio, the video, because I think it would have gone viral just as well, because it's such a great quote. But that's my favorite. I keep that quote, because I've never heard an offensive lineman speak that way about pass protection. Shows you why he's so good at it, because he takes a lot of pride in it.
And think about too. You think about Kellen Moore as the head coach, where Kellen Moore was where he played the bulk of his NFL career and spent it as a coach was with the Cowboys. What was the one constant with the Cowboys through all those years? It was Tyron Smith at left tackle.
Yep.
So
O-line.
Kelvin's not quite like the physical freak that Tyron Smith was, from what I remember. But I believe Kellen Moore looks at Kelvin Banks and thinks, this is a guy we're going to put at left tackle for a decade and be really happy that we drafted him.
Yep. I agree with that. I think a lot of teams were overthinking it with Kelvin Banks, and I didn't understand that at all. All right, let's thank another one of our sponsors before we move on. Let's thank our friends over at South Point Dodge. That's right, folks. You can score an easy extra point this season when you get to the point with our friends over at South Point Dodge. South Point Dodge has over 600 vehicles in stock right now, including the all-new 2025 Jeep Wrangler. Get the real deal today and drive away in the Jeep Wrangler, a vehicle built for adventure. Plus, right now with South Point Dodge, you can get employee incentive pricing. That's right. You pay what our employees pay. That's the real deal over at South Point Dodge. So you won't find a better deal than that. You get the employee discount right now at South Point Dodge. You can score big today at South Point Dodge, no matter what deal you're looking for. Maybe a new car, maybe a used car, trade in, whatever you're looking for. My friends over at South Point Dodge are ready to offer you the real deal today. Go see them today off of I-35 in South Austin, or you can go online, make it easy on yourself, and see all of their 600 100 vehicles in stock there, as well as southpointdodge.com. Get to the point with our friends at South Point Dodge. And don't forget the employee incentive pricing. Really fancy way of saying you get the employee discount with our friends over at South Point Dodge. Thank you very much to South Point Dodge and southpointdodge.com for being sponsors of our Friday live stream and partners here with On Texas Football. All right, let's get to, I know we're going to get to some draft discussion about the day 2 potential draftees from the Longhorns. So we'll get to that as well. But got a super chat here from Jack. Jack, thank you for the super chat. Really appreciate it. Says, Rod, so proud of our Horns. 3 first rounders and more to come. Culture speaks. Amen to that. I mean, there's no doubt that Texas at this point, had 11 guys last year. I think you're going to settle in on, I think it's going to be 13, Jeff. I figured 13. I mean, that's still a lot. I'm saying settling on there. I figure that's the number, 13. But you're right. If they get there, but they're going to get double digits, right? We know that. Let's just say they get 12. Say they don't get 13. Say they get 12, somewhere around there. I mean, you're going to be talking about 23 draft picks in a 2-year span. I know Texas has been putting them out there. I got to go find out the last time they did that, or have they ever done that? They ain't never done that, right? I don't know if they ever done that.
I'll go look because I'm still.
The most is in a 2 years. I'm sure 05, 06, you came close to it those years. 04, 05, somewhere around there.
It's hard to believe, there's some schools that are known for certain positions, and I guess with Texas it makes sense as long as you were running the wishbone and with great running backs Texas has, that your wide receiver tradition would probably not be as prolific. Since the merger, there's only 4 Texas wide receivers going to first round. Matthew Golden's the 4th. Mm-hmm. Lamb Jones, Roy Williams, Xavier Worthy, and Matthew Golden. 4 first-round wide receivers since the merger. 2 of them played for Sark.
Yeah, but that's because if you're gonna look at you know this Texas football, the Texas football didn't start throwing the ball to McAfee got it.
But it's hard to think like Alignment Swede couldn't have snuck in there. Like there was, there's been opportunities to have guys.
That's true.
But it's just hard to believe there's only 4.
Yeah, you're right. And I will say this, and I'm probably going to get into this later too. The NFL Sark's receivers, a lot of them are outliers in a sense. They are this very unique outliers, either statistically or even physically. Talk about the speed, right? You go look at, because Matthew Golden, I believe, was the 12th fastest 40 time for a wide receiver at the combine. If I'm not mistaken, 4 of the top 12 of them played under Sark at one point. Mm-hmm. X-Man, Golden, John Ross, and Ruggs. Yeah. And those are also a lot of receivers that, if you go look at it, and I said I'll get into it. If you go look at their best years, they didn't. Xavier Worthy did, but Henry Ruggs didn't have a stellar entire season. Matthew Golden, one of the criticisms is he basically showed up at the end of the season. He was the best player in college, basically the best receiver in college football for 4 game stretch, somewhere around there. Right. Yeah. That's one of the criticisms of him, that he didn't put it. He doesn't have a huge sample size of that kind of productivity. So the NFL likes Sark's receivers, even though they're outliers. I mean, look at how Devontae Smith was an outlier as well, right? Go look at how skinny and his frame was. Usually the NFL doesn't draft receivers that skinny, that small, that high. But Sark's receivers are different, even, X-Man too. So I think it's interesting that Sark's preference for receivers, the NFL likes his guys, and they like the way that he showcases them. He almost gives them a little bit of a blueprint. He gives you a manual. He's like, hey, look at this receiver X-Man. Now, you want to know how to use him, Andy Reid? Here's the manual. Just use him this way. Here's Devontae Smith. Yes, I know he's skinny and he's really slight. He's one of the smallest receivers ever drafted this high in the draft. But if you want to know how to use this really small-ish, skinny wide receiver, use the manual. Use the Sark concepts. Use targets in motion. Put him in the motion a lot. Put him in stacks formation. Put him in bunch formations. They got these different ways to use them. And I think it's one of the things that I'll give Sark credit for. I think he did have an influence on NFL wide receiver evaluation. They have changed. Like they're now look at smaller wide receivers. They'll spend more draft capital on smaller wide receivers than they used to back in the day. And I want to say it started around the Devontae Smith move, when I think he kind of showed the NFL that, hey, you can take a little guy like this and you really can turn him into a weapon.
Yeah, and I think you've got to have, forward-thinking coaches too. Nick Sirianni is one of those guys. Yep. Certainly, it's strange to me, and I think it just shows you how not all football disciples are created equal. Mm-hmm. That Andy Reid and John Gruden can come from the same limb of the Bill Walsh tree, And you won't find two guys more diametrically different. Like John Gruden, just stubborn and stuck in his ways and wants to have, play calls as long as a front restaurant menu, whatever. That's great. Andy Reid said, I'm going to work smarter, not harder, and simplify it. And I'm going to mold my offense to what the college game is giving me rather than the other way around, which is how Patrick Mahomes works and how an Xavier Worthy works and so on and so forth. And why John Gruden doesn't have, well, that's part of the reason why John Gruden doesn't have it. We know the other reason why John Gruden doesn't have a job, but I digress. But yeah, it's just strange. You got to have adaptable coaches. Like you can't, I'm sorry, Texas fans, but I'm going to say it because it's the classic example, the best example. Vince Young's NFL career is drastically different, probably if he plays for anybody but Jeff Fisher.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
Jeff Fisher, in a lot of ways, was the worst coach for him because, you're going to fit into this little box right here that I have for a quarterback. And that wasn't VY.
And now there's no coach that will ask a quarterback to do that. Like there's that would be seen as such an antiquated way of looking. Like, why would you draft a quarterback with that skill set and force him to play, the game in a very, regimented way? It's crazy. But
Vince had to have the restrictions put on it. Vince Young had to play in a straitjacket so Lamar Jackson could run. That's what we are.
That's right. And honestly, VY was born just like me in NIL, born a little bit too early because he was born a little bit later. The revolution comes with RG3 and Cam Newton later on. It comes. Then the NFL goes, I think I'd rather have an athlete like that at quarterback. And now half the damn league's got them athletes at quarterback. Yeah.
Another Longhorn that I say was constantly say was ahead of his time. And if he played, 10 years later, he'd be in the Hall of Fame. If Eric Metcalf played 10 years later, if he'd have come out in 1999 instead of 1989, Eric Metcalf would be in the Hall of Fame.
I agree with that. Put him with Sean Payton. And it set records. Yep, Hall of Fame. I agree with that. Somebody else who's a Hall of Famer is our friends over at Von Lane. They offer Hall of Fame service. And folks, Hall of Fame, trust me, Hall of Fame travel. That's what you're talking about with our friends over at Von Lane. If you tried flying, you tried driving, now it's time to upgrade to Von Lane, the smarter way to travel between major Texas cities. Let's face it, flying is a hassle. Security lines, packed gates, delayed flights, all for a 50-minute trip. It's not worth it. If driving isn't much better, you've ever tried that same-day round trip between Dallas and Austin or Houston and San Antonio? That's hours of lost productivity, emails piling up, calls going unanswered, work left undone, all while trying to focus on the road with traffic jams. Why waste the day when you can stay connected and productive with Von Lane? Von Lane changes everything. It's luxury regional bus travel, what some call a private jet on wheels. Sink into a plush leather seat with a leg rest. Stay connected with complimentary Wi-Fi. Enjoy complimentary snacks and drinks on every trip, plus delicious meals on select departures. If you need to freshen up, you can indulge in hot towel service. They have eye masks and pillows and blankets to help you relax. The Von Lane team, they take care of everything so you can sit back, relax, and enjoy the most comfortable travel experience on the road today. And that's why I love Von Lane. I've actually taken the Von Lane several times to Houston and to Dallas. It is fantastic. And even if you have a guy's trip or a gal's trip or a football game, bachelor party, bachelorette party, concert, or special event, you can charter your own Von Lane coach for the ultimate group experience. Von Lane is first-class travel without hassle. See for yourself. Visit vonlane.com. That's VONLANE.com. Use the promo code OTF25. That's OTF25 for $20 off your first trip with vonlane.com. Thank you very much to our friends over at Von Lane for sponsoring our Friday live stream. All right, how about this one? Cisco says, what is the average money the three Longhorns will sign for in the first round? Oh, it goes up every year. Okay, so let me look this up.
I have it, Rod, if you want it. But now, like as you were saying, before I cut you off, and I apologize for that, but the rookie wage scale increases as the salary cap increases. Rookie signing bonuses, Rod, are up 26% this year across the board because of the cap increase. Estimated signing bonuses for these guys: Kelvin Banks, $16.8 million. 9.8 million for Jahdae Barron and 9.4 million for Matthew Golden. So in signing bonus money, those three Longhorns are worth $36 million.
God is good all the time. Amen to that. Yeah, and that's on top of the NIL money that they've been making too. So it's different than you used to do this, and you'd be like, "Oh man, can't wait till that check gets in my account." Now these guys are like, "I don't get there when it gets there. The bank account's already fat."
Hey, Kelvin Kelvin was actually, turns out, one of the few that got that Pancake Factory money. So props to him.
Oh, Jahdae got some good bread too. I'm sure he got some good bread.
He did. Oh, he did.
To the corner. He got moved to a premium position. So that little bump.
Wait, you were talking about the Broncos, Rod, and I think this sets us up for the next 2 days. You mentioned offensive weapons, running back and tight end. Mm-hmm. Gunnar Helm, Colorado native.
Yep.
So you think that could be a fit. And man, there was a ton of buzz and I know he went and visited them for a top 30. There was a ton of buzz about Jaden Blue and the Broncos in the pre process.
Just because they're looking for an Alvin Kamara type player to put in the back. Those are good ones. And so let me ask you this, since you throw it out there. Day 2. Who are your Longhorns you think are going to go day 2 here, rounds 2 and 3?
I think it's going to be 3. I think Alfred Collins is the first one to get his name called today, just because I think, defensive line I wouldn't say it's been picked over. I think you're just getting to the point where you got a lot of guys like Alfred Collins that didn't have like a first round grade, but probably like, maybe late 1 to like mid 2. There's going to be very little separation, and there's going to be a run on those guys. With as many offensive linemen that went last night, I think you're going to see a run on defensive linemen starting today. So I think Alfred Collins. I think Andrew McCuba's gotten himself in the day 2 mix. I don't know if he goes second round, but I think he goes tonight. And I think before the end of the night, Quinn Ewers has a new football home. I think somebody will take him. There will be a team. I think even if they have to trade back in, trade up, get into the 3rd round, I think somebody's going to say, we don't want to wait till day 3 to get Quinn Ewers. We got to get our quarterback now.
Yeah. Ben says Williams for sure, right? Cam Williams, there's a chance. I think he's a 3rd round to a 4th round guy, so maybe there's a shot team takes a chance. But I like Gunnar Helm getting some love here. I like Makuba potentially getting some love here. Obviously Alfred Collins, I think, is probably my favorite to get drafted today. I think he's one of those guys. I think those 3 for me: Alfred Collins, Makuba, and Gunnar Helm. Barron Sorrell is a sneaky one too. Barron's really went in the 3rd somewhere. For some reason, I feel a lot of teams really like Barron. No, for some reason, I know why they really like him, but I have, he's been kind of moving up some folks' boards. Apparently, is what I've been hearing. So hopefully, that is really good news for Barron Sorrell. We'll hear his name called too. But your football culture is in a good place when you have this many draft picks, and there's very few boomer bust guys. Well, we said, Kelvin Banks is a safe pick. Jahdae Barron is a safe pick. Barron Sorrell, the baseline, the floor for Barron Sorrell is very high. Yeah. The floor for Gunnar Helm is very high. Mm-hmm. So the fact that to me, Andrew McCuba's got a high floor. Like the fact that you've got so many high floor safe guys that if you draft them, you feel like, man, unless this guy, I don't know, drops a weight on his foot and gets drop foot in an off-season workout, like he's gonna be with us for 5 to 7 years. Yeah, that's a good point.
He's going to be a good locker room guy, good teammate. And, here's my thing with Cam Williams, though, Rod. Like, talent-wise, I think he's a top 100 pick. But the knee problem, obviously, it was worse than anybody probably initially thought or was released. And because he didn't do anything during the pre-draft process. Missed the combine and missed the pro day. So, unfortunately, the last thing he put on film was that Ohio State game. And he was trying to block Jack Sawyer and those Ohio State edge rushers, trying to block them on one leg. And that's hard to do on 2 good legs, let alone 1. Yeah. So props to him for gutting it out and being tough. But I don't think that didn't do him any favors. And I know the weight fluctuation was something that I think I wouldn't call it a red flag, but he got down to like 317. I think it was 317 at the combine.
Yeah,
he was back up to 330 by the time he got to pro day, but was it a good 330? That's for the teams to decide. So there's just some volatility there with Cam Williams.
No, I agree with that. All right, let's thank our last sponsor of the afternoon before we get out of here. A good word and a great message from our friends over at Advanced Pain Care. Listen up.
Pros know the pain stops here.
Physical therapy helps me as an athlete then and now. And do I still need therapy? Yes. Advanced Pain Care helps with that.
Injuries will stack up. They'll add up. You can't let those injuries get you down, and Advanced Pain Care has been very helpful for me.
We can help with whatever's got you down, from nerve damage to our spinal cord stimulator. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Same-day appointments available.
Advanced Pain Care. The pain.
All right. Thank you very much to our friends over at Advanced Pain Care. Actually, I live near, I don't know how many Advanced Pain Cares they have, but I live near one of the Advanced Pain Cares over here. So Robbie might be visiting sooner rather than later. So thank you to Advanced Pain Care. Thank you to our friends over at South Point Dodge, southpointdodge.com, Flat Creek Estate Winery, flatcreekestate.com. Appreciate them. And Bond Lane, bondlane.com, OTF. Remember, use that code and you'll get $20 off your first trip with our friends over at Von Lane. Thank you guys very much for the super chat. Thank you guys for the questions, your participation. I apologize if we couldn't get to all of the questions. The last one from Lex here says, Ewers goes before Shedeur. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say Shedeur goes before Quinn Ewers. I'll say somebody picks him up in the second round here, but that was a lot of drama with Shedeur Sanders over the first round of the NFL draft. So we'll get into that, of course. All right, any last words, Jeff, before we get out?
Yeah, I think it's going to continue to be a great weekend for the Longhorns. So let's just run it down, right? Alfred Collins, Andrew Makuba, Gunnar Helm, Quinn Ewers, Cam Williams. Who am I leaving out? Jake Majors, Hayden Connor, Jaden Blue. The guy that the wrench that's been thrown in the plan, Rod, the fly in the ointment is Isaiah Bond's situation. Has that caused him for teams to take him completely off their board? Is it a wait and see? Does somebody pull the trigger? So that's kind of the one that it's to be determined. But it's going to be Barron Sorrell, because who we just talked about. Yeah, you can get to 13 pretty easy. But if you hit double digits, it beats the hell out of us recapping the draft where we're talking about nobody got drafted and why is this program not developing players. The narrative has changed, and it's changed for the better. And I, for one, could not be happier because I love the draft, and I love that the draft is relevant, Rod, for us at On Texas Football. So I love that we got substantive draft talk right now.
Yeah, man. Times are good. That's no doubt about that. We're talking about double-digit players for back-to-back years for the Longhorns. All right, thank you, Jeff, for all the great knowledge and expertise. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes. He's the real MVP, and we appreciate all you guys for joining us. For Jeff and for Matthew and for all of our sponsors, vonlane.com, southpointdodge.com. Appreciate them. flatcreekestate.com as well, and Advanced Pain Care. I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Until next time, hook 'em horns.
Hook 'em.